So I mentioned that pedigrees are often where we start. So if we're still talking about those prospective parents, they've gone to a genetic counselor, they've done and worked up that particular pedigree. If they're pre getting pregnant, then some of that carrier testing and things can be an option. If they've already gotten pregnant or decided to go ahead with pregnancy and still want to do some testing to find out whether or not their offspring could potentially have some genetic disorders, they've got some additional options on that end as well. So there's some fetal testing. So this is still in utero. Baby hasn't been officially born yet. Here they kind of have two big options historically. We look at the amniocentesis, which is what's going on over here. All right. And so they go through and they'll pull out some amniotic fluid. They'll be able to run those fetal cells and create a carrier type from there. They can also do some biochemical testing. That's typically a little later. They need the baby big enough to not worry about spontaneous abortion, although, regardless, that's still potentially problematic. So, we're usually talking more like 18, 20 plus weeks there. This one says anywhere between 14 and 16 weeks, although I usually have come across it a little later than that. Your CVS or your chronic villus testing, done considerably earlier, somewhere more about the 10th week. Also, even more high risk than this, where they'll actually go in and take a little bit of tube through your cervix and take some placental cells. Remember that placenta is built from that fertilized egg, so it is baby information there. Considerably higher risk, so they would probably be doing it for good reason. Now, there are additional options now where they can actually take a blood draw from mom and be able to find some baby cells floating around her actual bloodstream, which is kind of cool. So that tends to be more the common way to go about it. They can do that about the 13th week. And hopefully that information all comes back well and good, and then they can avoid all of this entirely. That being said, if they come back with some of that initial genetic testing that might be concerning, this would often be sort of a follow-up test to that. There's also a lot of newborn screening. So baby's born, and now we want to check to make sure that any other diseases that would not necessarily have been things that were detrimental in utero or right after birth, but are things that can be managed, diseases that can be managed post-birth relatively easily, so long as we know about them. We'll get screened for as soon as baby is born or within the first few days. Often this is by a heel prick, so they'll take little baby's foot and do a blood draw from their heel, and they're looking for all sorts of things. PKU disease, which is a disease where the body isn't able to properly manage a particular amino acid that's found in certain products and certain foods, and so long as you stay away from those things, it generally isn't an issue. But if you do not stay away from those products, then you can have some serious metabolic issues. Sickle cell anemia is something they look for. Hypothyroidism is something else they might test for. Um, Pretty much every hospital in the US does perform these tests. You just may see some variation from state to state or county to county, even as to specifically which tests they'll run at birth. But the whole point here is to catch these diseases early because they are manageable with proper care.